right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are once again simultaneously streaming both on YouTube and TikTok. We have a number of things we got to talk about tonight, quite a bit. The Chosen Fan, thank you very much for joining us over there on TikTok, and good evening to all my folks on YouTube. This is our evening tropical update. I know we kind of kicked things off a little bit sooner than I'd anticipated, but you know what? It's for a good reason. I just want to make sure that I can cover down everything that we need to cover down and talk about without running out of time. Otherwise, I'd run short on time, and I don't want to breeze through it. So good evening. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. It is Monday, June 10th, 2024. We are working our way through the month of June very quickly, very rapidly. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We'll let a few more folks join us. Let's see. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put the chat back in there so I can go ahead and put them side by side. Life, hello there on TikTok. Thank you very much for joining us. Alrighty, guys. So we're looking at a multitude of different threats across the board, not only for the tropics, but also for the United States. So as the models have been indicating for the last week, if not more than that, some change, there is our trough you can see towards the uppermost quadrant of the chart here, the satellite imagery. I'll scroll up just a little bit so we can see. There we go. And I'll use a more vibrant color of ink so you guys can see a little bit clearer. So here's our trough, our rather erroneous trough that's bringing a little bit of drier, somewhat cooler air across the Great Lakes, the Midwest, and the Northeast, and the Mid-Atlantic. It is not going to make its way as far south as Florida, unfortunately, or the Gulf Coast. That's not the case, unfortunately. It's actually just going to allow enhancement of our precip action across the Southeast and up the Mid-Atlantic. And there's actually some very, very, very interesting phenomena that we want to talk about that involves not only the system that's going to push over Florida, but what it could possibly transform into once it lifts off to the north. Very interesting, I guess you could say, anomalies with it, and we'll talk all about that here momentarily. This is our gyre. Our gyre is rocking and rolling, just as we had discussed last time we were here on the stream. You can see copious amounts of thunderstorm activity over the Yucatan Peninsula, over Central America. The status quo has not changed out there as well. And South America is still buffeted by our tropical moisture, our daytime convection, and the ITCZ is alive and well. Our Saharan air layer has not been as substantial as a lot of folks had initially anticipated. A lot of folks were mentioning before we got into the hurricane season that the dust was going to play a major factor on shutting the season down, and that's really not the case. In fact, there's a lot of statistical analysis that's going on across the not the Mid-Atlantic, excuse me, I guess you could say the Mid-Atlantic, the actual ocean, the central to eastern Atlantic, and our Saharan dust is really not doing a heck of a lot to impede a tremendous amount of our African easterly waves or our tropical waves that have emerged from Africa this early on in the hurricane season. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to take a bit of a closer look here. We're looking down over the Caribbean, and you can see a lot of thunderstorm action, a lot of thunderstorm activity, and I want to bring your attention to right through here. Lots of shear, unfortunately, so we're not going to see a huge amount of consolidation out of this. You can see the high-level cirrus and how the thunderstorms that blossomed over the Florida Peninsula are just being cut down in their prime for all intents and purposes. The shear is washing it out. But right there, we have a little bit of vorticity, tropical energy is what we'll call it, that's moving its way. It's gone through the Yucatan Channel. It is now down in the south and eastern Gulf of Mexico. Thunderstorm activity rapidly firing with it, but unfortunately, like I said, the tops of those clouds are getting shaved off by how much shear we still have in place down there. So models are very, very iffy as to whether or not we're going to get any sort of low pressure development. It looks like it's attempting to develop something. Will we get a named storm? Will we even get a disturbance? Will we get anything classified by the National Hurricane Center? I really don't think so. I feel like if they were going to classify something, they would have done it by now, unfortunately, but they haven't done so. This is going to be entity number one, and we're going to watch this entire area because I do believe this is going to be somewhat of a hot zone for the second half of June. Models are starting to trend in that sort of a direction. We're going to have to watch for disturbance after disturbance possibly getting shot out of this general area, whether it be up towards the Texas coastline, the Louisiana coastline, maybe even colliding with Mexico, being a non-factor for the United States, but possibly an eastern Mexico issue. And you can definitely see the gyre is in full effect. Actually, I love this because let me slow the loop down a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. If you look right here, I'll go ahead and draw the outline for you. Right there. Look at that giant upper-level anticyclone spinning up. and that is a wonderful indication of where our gyre is located. This is all lowering pressure down here. And when I say lower pressure, I don't necessarily mean specifically that there's a cyclonic spin. There is a cyclonic spin down there. But in this case, when I say lowering pressure, that anticyclone is allowing all that air down closest to ground level to lift up. And that's creating localized or generalized low pressure down at the surface, responsible for creating that widespread thunderstorm action. So the first feature is here. This is going to lift off in this general direction. It looks like models are really quickly dialing in exactly where our strongest and heaviest rainfall is going to occur with this. And then shortly thereafter, we have a bit of divergence in our Euro and our GFS ensembles. I'll show you the Canadian models as well again, just to double check and see what's going on. And we'll kind of decipher it and break it down from there. But yes, a very big, heavy rain threat for certain for the state of Florida as we go over the next several days. Not even just the next couple of days, the next several days. Let's go ahead and say hello to a couple people. The Chosen Fan in on TikTok. The Gulf Coast states need to be prepared this hurricane season. I do agree. Everybody needs to be prepared from the southeast, the Gulf coastline, up the eastern seaboard, definitely. In fact, I'll tell you one prime example why folks all the way up towards the northeast and even Atlantic Canada may need to pay close attention to the hurricane season very soon. Richard Perez, thank you very much for joining us. Scrooge McDuck, thank you so much. And also, Richard Perez, thank you for the $5 donation, buddy. I do genuinely appreciate that. As always, it goes without saying. And thank you so much for the kind words as well. I congratulate Weather Center Nazario for receiving his first Navy certificate. A true upcoming soldier in the making. No doubt he will serve this nation outstandingly. I salute you, brother. Thank you very much for that. I render a salute as well on the channel. Braden's WX, thank you so much for joining us. Factory Polo, Chris Mazzell, Bob Brown, Braden's WX, Coney Floralis, Cassie D, PM, Factory Polo again, Twilight Firefly, good evening, good to see ya. Lifelong F-Ups. There goes Zuriel doing the classic, the trademark, hyping up as always. I don't know what's going on there, but we're just going to pay no attention to that. Brooke Ward, thank you so much for joining us. Super Charas, hello there. Clayton Kenny, Jai, TG Herman, good to see ya. As always, it's always a pleasure to have you. Bob Black, Hydra 47. Let's see who else we got in here. Freezing. I hope it isn't like last time where everyone said he was Naz. If you see this, don't listen to. Oh no, I agree with you, Freezing. I'm not going to. Don Martinez, thank you very much for joining us. Let's see who else we have in on TikTok. I have a few people joining in. All right, so this is going to be our area of concern, the state of Florida. I'm not too sure why WPC has only gone up to the level 2 of 4, the slight risk for excessive rainfall. And just to give you a little bit of an insight on how they do this characterization, what this means is, are we going to see the potential for rainfall to exceed flash flood criteria? Which means if we issue a flash flood, will we go beyond that threshold to where flooding is essentially guaranteed? So we're getting a level 2 out of a 4 risk here for all the next upcoming days, the foreseeable future. We're at a marginal risk for today. Days 2 through 5 are going to be at that slight risk, especially for the bottom half of the peninsula, and I'm fully on board with that. There's been just a little bit of wiggling and wobbling back towards the north, back down towards the south. At this point, especially looking at what the satellite imagery looks like, I think we've almost sealed the deal that the southern half of the peninsula is going to be the ones getting most of the inundation. Well, taking a look at our quantitative precipitation forecast, this is going to be our total precip brought to us by WPC. You can see day 1, quite a heavy rain threat for south and southwest Florida, particularly the Charlotte Harbor, Fort Myers area down towards the Florida Keys. Day 2, same thing, same story, southern half of the Florida Peninsula. I want to say just along the southern periphery, maybe midway through the counties of Polk and Osceola and down towards the south. East Coast, you're looking at right around maybe Satellite Beach, Vero Beach, and down to the south of there. It looks like right around just barely to the north of Sarasota, just to the immediate south of the Tampa Bay area, and further down from there, all the way down to, once again, the Florida Keys is going to be under the gun for the heaviest rainfall. Day 3, very similar song and dance. Day 4, not a whole lot of change. Day 5, Day 6, and Day 7, noticing that there's actually a bit of an indication that something's going to lift to the north. So WPC is definitely seeing something as well. Here's a look at our days 1 through 7 totals, and you can see a ton of rainfall on here. This is definitely excessive. Total quantitative precipitation forecast, 168 hours out, 7 days out. Totals looking at around between 5 to somewhere around 10. Some very, very localized whispers there, right around Fort Myers, Punta Gorda almost 12 to 15 inches. So they're definitely going in on their rainfall forecasts, and I will definitely, I can definitely see this. Our entire model suite, as I'd like to describe it, is calling for very heavy rainfall. Very heavy rainfall. So with that being said, let's get into some of the more exciting stuff. I don't think it's going to vary that greatly. In this case, we're very locked in. I think we're very locked in. We're going to see the southern half of the peninsula getting the most amount of this rainfall. Now, in terms of specific numbers, I will agree with you and say, yeah, we don't want to focus specifically on the numbers, but we're definitely going to see a lot of rainfall from about the Orlando metro area and further to the south. Let's see, who else do we have in the chat? I'm seeing the chat popping off. Incognito, PEXTT, Cape is going to get hammered with some rain. Let's go, yes. Silver Steel S might have to wait until August to see some impressive hurricanes. I'm starting to think that that's the same. I definitely do agree with that. It seems like we're definitely going to see a very, very slow start to the hurricane season, which, you know, I've been mentioning on this channel, and I don't want to wander into speculation immediately because we have a lot of hard facts to cover here, but we've been seeing almost like a textbook rerun of 2004 since December. Just putting that out there, and that's all I'm going to say. Braden's WX, happy birthday. Happy birthday. How old you turning, dude? Let us know in the chat. How old are you turning so we can give you a quick little birthday shout-out. Chandler K, I'm not too sure if I've said hello to you, but hello there. Venture Horizon, Jack Hoff, who else? Hydra 47, the rainfall numbers are on and off for the I-4. Yeah, I-4 corridor is definitely going to be very different. We're going to have some wiggling and wobbling around there for sure. Kevin McGinn, hello there. And Binky RCD, thank you very much for joining us. Who else? I see Melita. I don't see Melita's message though. Melita, if you have, oh, there you are. Melita Ebanks, hey, why is it that my message looks like it's been censored? Let me know if you can see this message. Thank you. I can see your message. Sorry, I had glazed over it for a brief second. Misty G. David, thank you very much for following from Louisiana on TikTok. I appreciate that. Northport, and we'll definitely get into all that here in a moment. Destiny Oliver asking about Lake City, Florida. We'll talk about all that. Will they alarm people before they hit Gulf of Mexico? Alert people, you mean, the Chosen fan? Absolutely. So we're looking at the European model here now, and honestly, there's some very, very interesting up-and-comings on the European model. First and foremost, we're looking at 12 Zulu. You can see the Euro is in full agreement that there's going to just be a gigantic glob of precipitation that's going to float right over the Central Florida Peninsula. And I'm not too sure if she's watching. Let's see. Let me go on my TikTok real quick. I had someone asking a ton of Alicia Warner. She was asking on TikTok not too long ago whether or not the Panhandle was going to see quite a tremendous amount of rainfall. It's looking a little more promising, Alicia, if you're tuning in from TikTok or somewhere on the YouTube channel. Just letting you know that right now. But you can see that Florida is definitely going to get inundated. And then take a look at that. The European model is spinning something up. The Euro is definitely adamant that something might try to develop. Now, there's a lot of folks going back and forth. A tremendous amount of folks going back and forth on this. Truthfully, as much as I want to get excited, Zuriel is no longer in the chat. So be it. As much as I want to get hyped for a tropical system, I don't think this is it. And I'll take you through why I think that is. We'll go to the East Coast United States AOY, and I'll take you through the rest of the loop. And if you look, that low pressure gets going pretty rapidly, deepens down to 984 millibars, 985, 985, 988 before going up towards Nova Scotia, the eastern Canadian provinces, right along the Atlantic coastline of Canada. But the reason I don't think that this is tropical, it might try to go tropical early on. We could maybe see a tropical depression if it decides to organize once it gets over the Gulf Stream and moves up towards the mid-Atlantic coastline. We'll have to see. But the main reason I'm not entirely sold on this being a huge tropical entity is if you look at the synoptic pattern, we're not really seeing that favorability. There's a front right in through here, front coming down. Here's high pressure over the Great Lakes that's moving down towards the south and east. Here's more high pressure on the east side of the system. So we're getting it sucked in between the two major entities, and our trough is continuing to lift it up. And so just looking at the surface level, what this tells me is we definitely have temperature discontinuity. There is a temperature gradient just upstream of this low pressure. At this point in time, on June 15th, it might not have picked up that jet support yet. So there is going to be maybe a 24 to 48 hour window where this thing could try to acquire those tropical characteristics. It's just going to be a matter of if it'll consolidate. I'll switch on over, and this is why it's a little bit iffy. If we switch over to our temperature anomaly and you scroll through time as that puppy gets going, it is 110% warm core, folks. Look at that on the 15th of June. This is the European model. For folks out there who may think that, we're using the GFS to get excited, this is the Euro. We're looking at the 12Z European model. 110% warm core in nature. We're not too sure if it's going to be barotropic and entirely vertically stacked just yet. We're still a few days out. We're 5 days out from this. But as you can see, there's our immense warming over the southeast brought on by the ridge that's building in from down over the south. And then here's our cooler air that's coming in with the trough and the frontal system I just mentioned. So initially speaking, as it takes its course and moves up the eastern, right there, this is whereabouts it'll probably start to undergo that extratropical or non-tropical transition if that is the case, if it does develop. Right now, the European model, all of our models are definitely all of our models are definitely more or less bombing this thing out and trying to deepen it down into almost a low-end hurricane. The 980s are definitely pushing Category 1 status, high-end tropical storm, very, very weak, perhaps preliminary 74, 75 mile an hour sustained hurricane. At this point in time, here's that anomalously cold air moving up over the eastern seaboard, the northeast, getting wrapped in that vortex. This is when we might possibly see it take on that frontal characteristic. We'll have to wait and see. But if I switch over to just strictly the mean sea level pressure at 12 Zulu, you guys can see for yourself, we have a fairly impressive low pressure right there. Look at that puppy. 993, 991, 988, 984. That is definitely hurricane force right there. However, I want to say at this point in time, looking at the pressure troughing down in through here, it looks like it will more than likely have taken on that extratropical kind of characterization. Here's our high pressure pushing the fronts further offshore. So by now it will more than likely have made its way into the polar front jet and have taken on support of the jet and lost its barotropic warm core nature as they talk about, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's go ahead and switch back down to the Caribbean. Not Central America. I want the actual Caribbean AOY. There it is. And we'll go back to our MSLP and precip model. So there goes our first entity, and the reason I keep saying this could be a potential hotspot is if you notice, once again, the European model is getting on board. The Euro is finally getting moving. It's definitely getting going. So as you can see down there over the Bay of Campeche and over the western Gulf of Mexico, we have another entity that could possibly be moving up. And to answer your question, I believe it was in the TikTok chat here a moment, Darius Slabby, my local weatherman, said the latest models pushed it west a little bit, less rain end of the week. It's definitely possible. It depends on where you're located. Forgive me if I've already forgotten. But you can see a little bit of vorticity bundles up and moves into the Texas-Louisiana coastline, bringing them some heavier rainfall. And then right about there, look at that. Possible east pack into the Bay of Campeche crossover, little weak tropical storm that crashes right into Mexico. This has been trending on the European ensembles for a considerable amount of time, and it's now on our European operational model, that is for sure. And it's been on there for the last couple of model runs as well. If I go back to 0Z this morning, you can see it right there, 997 millibar low. You go back to 12 Zulu yesterday, it is still there. You go towards the end of the loop, and there she goes, right there, forming up. So either that system that moves up the southeast coastline might try to steal the name Alberto, depending on how they classify it from the National Hurricane Center, if it does come to fruition, or we might have a Bay of Campeche system out there that could take the name Alberto, or we could possibly get an Alberto barrel. We'll see. We might be able to kill two birds with one stone, two names with one stone here in one fell swoop. And now we'll move on to the GFS, because the GFS has gotten just a little bit more believable in the short term. You can see the GFS model is definitely predicting a lot of that widespread heavy rainfall for an excessive amount of time, a large window here. You can see this is as we get started with the evening tonight at 0Z on Tuesday. Right here, you can see this is where we stand right now. Lots of moisture already getting pulled in from the Caribbean through the Yucatan Channel over Cuba. The Cayman Islands have seen a rapid increase in their thunderstorm activity, just as we'd advertised a bit for those folks down there watching. Sorry, excuse me. Everything is coming together pretty well, thankfully. And as you take this through time, notice that that rainfall just really doesn't back down. This is already Wednesday night into Thursday. And then finally, just like the European model is showing, once we get into the day on Friday, very early morning Friday, we have a low pressure system that tries to undergo genesis just off the Carolina coast, Georgia, South Carolina coastline. And it develops fairly quickly, but the GFS, believe it or not, doesn't give it a big vote of confidence. definitely doesn't give it a big vote of confidence. It kind of gets it picked up in the jet support. You can switch over to 200 millibars right here and see the winds. You can see that trough just barely on the screen, the edge of the screen here. I'll draw it in so you guys can see right there. That's your polar front jet impeding on the Central American gyre. This is your gyre anticyclone that's helping to try to reduce wind shear, increase our favorability for tropical activity down over the Western Caribbean, the Southern Gulf of Mexico, the Bay of Campeche. So GFS not giving it a major vote of confidence, but is definitely there. So we're still seeing some decent overlap from our models. There goes that second entity right here. The GFS is also picking up on right in line with the European model for Louisiana and easternmost Texas near the Beaumont, Texas area. And then there that goes right in line with what the Euro is calling for. A little feature down there in the Bay of Campeche moving towards Mexico. So far everything is making sense. This is where it looks to get potentially, I say potentially, a little wonky. Because this is not incredibly far out in the run. This is where it gets a little bizarre. I don't know if we're going to see a freaking major hurricane crashing into Texas like that. This initial development, however, it's either going to be that convective feedback down there from South America ingesting too much of the vorticity. Yeah, it looks like a lot of the vorticity comes off of South America and tries to spin something up before getting shot into the Gulf of Mexico and then getting pulled in half. If you look right there, the trough pulls some of that energy in half while we have this, quote, major hurricane ripping off towards the west. And I really don't think that's going to happen. But the reason I say there is a low-end potential is if we come back over to here and switch over to our GEFS ensembles, the 31 members, and we look down, let me go ahead and switch the AOI. We'll go down to the Caribbean. We'll use our MSLP, 31 members. Here we go. And we'll take a look at all of our ensembles individually. And if you look at that control member, the top leftmost corner, notice the control member does, in fact, actually have something developing right around that same time down there in the Southern Caribbean, just not nearly as organized, and not even close to as organized. Whereas if you switch over to ensemble member number 1, there's your major hurricane, moving right into southern Texas, almost the Corpus Christi, Texas area. So not good. It definitely looks like our long-range ensembles are sniffing at something. It almost, and the key takeaway here, folks, I'm not going to try to predict landfall. I'm not going to try to predict development. What I'm here emphasizing is we just may want to look into the possibility that after this first system moves through, the one that's going to dump a lot of rainfall for Florida, the southeast, we're going to have to watch for secondary development down there in the Southern Gulf of Mexico, the Western Caribbean, and then maybe one last entity trying to get itself going before we wrap up our gyre mode for at least the foreseeable future, for the first-ish half of July. So now, as I already alluded to in the beginning of the brief, as I said, model suite. When I say model suite, I'm saying just all the models in general. All the models in general. We're in very good agreement at this point in time that there's going to be a big-time rain event for the southern half of the state of Florida. This is going to be our first stop, the NOAA blend of models. I'll take you all the way through the period, and you can see very gratuitous amounts of rain down there for the south and west coast of Florida. Panhandle, Alicia, if you're watching from TikTok or if you're going to get word of this later on, Panhandle doesn't look to see that much over a 14-day window. This is about a 10 to 14-day window. The Panhandle is looking at between 3 to 4 inches with a nice bubble of very heavy rainfall for about the Mobile, Alabama area, Biloxi, Mississippi, approaching a foot of rainfall. But if you look, lots of excessive rainfall. Maple Gurley, perfect time to ask that question. Sarasota's looking at a whopping 15 inches of rainfall according to the NOAA blend. According to the NOAA blend. And now the reason I say that we're in pretty much unanimous agreement here is if we switch forward in time, we go over to the high-res ensemble forecast, the HREF, and we take it through time for 48 hours. Already at the 48-hour window, right around the Sarasota area, Fort Myers, Charlotte Harbor, Punta Gorda, southern Florida, getting towards Homestead, south of Lake Okeechobee, just to the upper periphery where the Florida Keys begin. The model on the HREF, this is only a 2-day window, is already calling for about, it looks like, 4 to 5 inches of rainfall over the next 2 days. That's it. 4 to 5, maybe some very, very isolated, localized areas of 6 inches of rainfall, depending on how heavy the rain is falling out of those thunderstorms and those rainfall complexes. So this is a 2-day window, and if you switch on over to the HRRR, the total precip, and you scroll through time, HRRR is singing much of the same tune. Southwest Florida, the same general area down from about the Miami, I'd say just south of Miami. We're looking at Homestead, Florida, just to the south of that area, across the Everglades and up through the southwest, capping out at around Sarasota, maybe just to the south of the immediate Tampa Bay area. HRRR is also looking at the possibility of getting upwards of a foot of rainfall over the next 48 hours. So we'll have to wait and see. It's definitely already getting started out there. We can go ahead and switch over to one last model. In fact, we'll go ahead and look at the hourly European model for the southeast total precip. So you go through time and you go all the way towards the tail of the loop. This is about a 4-day window. 4-day window, we're looking at about a foot of rainfall. I can see it up here in the top right-hand corner. If you want to look for those values that are the max expected, the greatest values of the greatest shading, you can see that the model here caps out at just above a foot of rainfall for Venice Beach, Fort Myers, Charlotte Harbor, Punta Gorda, very familiar area down there in southwest Florida. I'm in the Panhandle and we welcome any rainfall. Oh yeah, the Panhandle is going to see some rainfall, and in fact, I would honestly think that the rainfall for the Panhandle is going to be a bit more on the beneficial side. This is honestly more of worst case scenario for the south and southwest portion of Florida. We haven't had a lot of rainfall out there in a very extensive period of time. We've been dry across the board to where our wildfire threat and the drought conditions are very quickly trying to settle back in. And you can see we're echoing across the spectrum here. I mean, we can throw any model we want on the table. We can go to the full-fledged 12 Zulu Euro and take it through the entire loop. And if you look, definitely seeing the greatest rainfall amounts down there in the southwest Florida bend. And this is going to top out somewhere between 10 to 12 inches for sure. And that's definitely flood criteria. Definitely flood criteria. And the Euro is also picking up on the rainfall threat for Texas and Louisiana. We'll switch over to there as well so we can give anybody who may be viewing from that general area a bit of an idea. Once that second swath of very heavy rainfall comes up, tropical rainfall, there you go. Over the next 7 to 10 days, we're looking at very, very gratuitous amounts for the south and western portions of Louisiana. Shout out to Mike out there near the New Orleans area. I'm not too sure if you're in the chat tonight. And then the Houston, Texas area, the Beaumont, Texas, all the way down to about Corpus Christi once again. Looking at some pretty decent rainfall totals approaching the half a foot mark, about 5 to 6 inch threshold at the end of the period, 240 hours according to the 12Z Euro. P. Brewer 504 was just talking about the NOLA area, the New Orleans area. You guys are looking at some beneficial rainfall, although I know you don't really need it because you've had MCS, Bow Echo, Line Echo wave pattern moving through there. Just squall after squall moving through that area. Louisiana almost to its entirety giving you guys severe weather. So, all right, now, let's see. Where are we going to go from here? That's essentially the primary threat that I wanted to communicate here. I wanted to pull up the Korean model really quickly. I wanted to pull up the Korean model really fast alongside some of our European and GFS ensembles for the sake of talking tropics real quick. So first and foremost, we'll go to the 12Z European probabilities, and you can see even right now, we already are seeing some pretty decent tropical depression probabilities as it floats over top the state of Florida. Already seeing that. Freezing with a major hurricane that will possibly hit southern Texas, at least form to a tropical depression in your opinion. Well, freezing, like I had mentioned a little while ago, we definitely want to examine the potential of seeing some tropical organization down there towards the very tail end of June. I'm not going to start speculating on when and how high of a chance we have development, but we definitely want to start looking at it. So we have the European ensembles. These are our tropical cyclone probabilities. The cyclone probabilities go up very quickly once that system exits the Florida coastline and gets out over the warmer subtropical waters off the South Carolina, North Carolina coast, headed up towards Cape Hatteras. Small window of potential development. And then you can see our ensembles are really off to the races, getting all the way up to the 70 percentile mark at around 18 June for that development in the Bay of Campeche. So we're getting closer to that almost guaranteed development. And this is why I had mentioned I'm not going to use the GFS to really forecast, but one thing I'm noticing here is our tropical probabilities do come back for the southeast and down there in the southern Caribbean, right about where the GFS was predicting that phantom hurricane. So we're not looking at a hurricane threat. I don't think we're going to see Hurricane Beryl if we get Alberto out of one of these two different distinct circulations that our models are predicting, but I can definitely see another last glimpse of an area of interest that we'll have to pay close attention to before we round out the June, for sure. Let's see, what do we have in the chat? Jose, thank you very much for joining us. Any chance that potential BOC system pushes more northern towards Texas? I would say so, yes. It's going to depend very heavily on how strong our upper-level anticyclone can establish itself. That's what's going to change the overall pattern, and we'll go right over to our ensemble members right now to give you a better idea of that. So we'll start off with the European ensembles for 12 Zulu, and right out of the gate, if you look, there's a really good amount of ensemble agreement that something between 990 millibars to 1,000 millibars is going to organize and move up the eastern seaboard before, believe it or not, if you look at this, there's a couple of our ensemble members from the European model that swing that puppy back almost like what Tammy was supposed to do last hurricane season, back towards Florida. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. We only have maybe a few small cluster of our 51 European model members pointed out, but that's the reason I brought the Canadian model up. Right now, the general thinking with the average ensemble outlook is going to be up and away towards Atlantic Canada. But if you look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the Euro ensembles that actually swing that bad boy back towards Florida and bring it through as a somewhat organized system. And then I'm also going to turn your attention over to the Bay of Campeche down there in the western and southwestern Gulf of Mexico. If you look, we have our ensembles, our spaghetti plots going off the chain. Now, a lot of them do take it right into for a collision course with eastern Mexico. And as soon as it comes ashore, they're going to see lots of heavy rainfall, lots of good wind with this, but because you have to take into consideration we have a mountain chain that's only maybe about 50 to 100 miles inland for Mexico, that thing's not going to have a fighting chance. If it does try to develop and become an actual organized circulation, let alone a named storm, it's going to crash and burn almost immediately, and unfortunately they're going to be left with a just catastrophic flood event. The winds and the other tropical characteristics with it are not going to be that bad of a scenario. And then, like I mentioned, if you guys look, right around that same general time frame that the GFS was calling for, to answer your question on YouTube, Jose, Bay of Campeche system, if you look right around that same time frame, the 21st to the 22nd, our spaghetti plots come alive one more time, whether it be from the Western Caribbean or down in the BOC, once again, bringing something up towards Texas. Pretty decent ensemble agreement. There's 3 swaths here. There's 1 swath and there's 2 swaths, and then I'll change the ink color so you guys can see it, but then these little plots right in through here, these maybe half dozen, just above half dozen members that want to track up towards Texas, Louisiana, is going to be that third punch of potential model agreement. If we swing on over to our GFS ensembles, I give the GFS ensembles a bit greater vote of confidence than I do the GFS operational model, because there is that human element, that tweaking that we can do. You can see GFS, not as much of a vote of confidence for that first system, thinking maybe some low-end development trying to spin up off the the Tampa coastline before moving up towards the southern Big Bend of Florida, kind of coming up towards Ocala, exiting the coastline between Daytona Beach, Palm Bay, and or the Palm Coast area. And no, is that Palm Bay? I want to say it is Palm Bay and the Jacksonville area before our ensembles really get going for not only the southern Caribbean, but the Bay of Campeche, pulling up towards Texas, Louisiana, and then there goes our next wave crashing and burning into Mexico before that fourth echo, that fourth signal actually has a few stronger members in there. And if you guys noticed, the Euro had a couple of strong members in there as well, so you know, not going to start dialing in intensity, development time frames, but it does seem like regardless, the second half of June, we're definitely going to have to keep a close eye out. And then going back over to the Korean model, just for shoots and giggles, the reason I brought this up is because not only do our European ensembles and the GFS ensembles do have that weird solution of whatever forms up after moving over Florida, has that weird solution of it swooping back around. If you look, the Korean model right around the 12th of June develops a weak low pressure off the Tampa coastline, pushes it inland, and then watch this. That thing rapidly deepens, swoops around and then batters the Jacksonville, Florida area as possibly a hurricane. If we switch over to our mean sea level pressure and take a look at the actual millibar on that 12Z, right there, look at that guy. Who the F is that guy for our Conor McGregor fans out there? A Korean model. And the reason I bring this up is because, truthfully, it looks a little bizarre, but if you look down in the Bay of Campeche, the Korean model is also sniffing out the same entity that the GFS, the European model, are looking at as well. So, it's not exactly as far-fetched as you may think. Now, do I think we're going to have a freaking hurricane spinning back towards Jacksonville? That would be, I'm not going to say never. Never say never in the weather. But am I going to say that is the most likely outcome? No. But it is very interesting that our Korean model is showing very good run-to-run consistency with the GFS, the Canadian, the European model, the Euro AI model, and that it also has that weird solution of that system boomeranging back around and coming in for another attack on the northeast coast of Florida, moving through Georgia. So, I don't know. We'll definitely have to see. We'll definitely have to wait and see. And then we switch on over to the UK Met. The reason I'm using the UK Met is just so we can look at every single model that we have available to us. 12Z UK Met has a low pressure organizing off the the west coast of Florida, pushing across, and then we see more development off the west coast. Wow, I'm getting my coastlines messed up. We see a little bit of organization off of our west coast, just to the southwest of Tampa Bay, and then re-intensification off the east coast. There we go. I fixed my compass rose. Shoot. And then the UK model is also right on track with something lifting out of the eastern Pacific and moving into the Bay of Campeche. Unfortunately, we cannot see that far out, but it does look like something is going to try to lift as our anti-cyclone becomes a very dominant feature right in through here, which is why most of our models have whatever developing down there in the BOC, either trying to make a run for Corpus Christi, the southern coast or the southern border of Texas, or just crashing and burning for all intents and purposes in the along the front range of the mountains out there in Mexico. Another little area note on the UK models, if you look, there's a little bit of an amplified tropical wave that's moving through the pattern. So Lesser Antilles, if you guys are tuning in tonight, you'll have to watch that as we get into the back end of June as well. We have a very robust tropical wave that I think is getting ready to exit Africa as we speak. And the UK model, for example, wants to bring it through and keep it organized. So that could bring up your rain chances down there for the Lesser Antilles and the ABC Islands just to the north of South America. And this could possibly be what our models are thinking as it moves along just a little bit further in time. Could try to do something as it either approaches Central America, the Yucatan, or if it tries to lift up a little bit further to the north and flow seamlessly through the Yucatan Channel between most of our islands. So we'll definitely have to wait and see. There's definitely quite a bit of different interesting features out there that we want to pay close attention to. If we come on over to our vorticity anomaly for the upper levels to take a look at what our favorable environment looks like, it does seem like we've seen a bit of an extension, just a little bit, not the most gratuitous anomalies out there. But if you look, the European control member is thinking we might have a pretty decent shot at keeping our environmental upper level conditions on the cooler side, and not the, and when I say cooler, I don't mean like colder temps. I mean just like, this is cool. This is a little more favorable for that rising motion thunderstorm and possibly tropical organization. And it takes it all the way through to just around maybe July 2nd, July 3rd, maybe right around the 4th of July. So we'll definitely have to see. We'll have to wait and see exactly what takes place, what takes shape. But yeah, that's all she wrote, guys. If we move over to our GEFS as well, let me go back one more panel so I can go back to our special charts, and we look at the GEFS vorticity anomaly. Look at the control member. You can see lots and lots of agreement that will have some favorable conditions lingering for the Gulf of Mexico and the Western Caribbean for the rest of the month, which goes right back to why I think CPC has us designated for that slightly above average 20% and above chance for development out there in the Caribbean, the Bay of Campeche. It looks like they might just verify. I'll go ahead and round out the live stream with a look at the latest tropical chart here, and I'll open the floor up to questions. So Crestview, Florida is going to be okay. Everybody is going to be okay. Let me just put that out there right now for everybody watching. We have a few viewers tuning in from TikTok. We have quite an extensive amount of people on YouTube. Just to put it into perspective, guys, we're not looking at anything catastrophic. We're not looking at anything disastrous. We're looking at a very high-end flood risk, I will tell you that much, especially for the southwest coastline of Florida. But we're not looking at any imminent major tropical impacts. The most we're going to get out of this is mainly rainfall. I've also seen some speculation. Maya, you can chime in for this as well if you're still there on TikTok. I've been mentioning, or not I've been mentioning, but I've been seeing a lot of mentioning that there could be a tornado outbreak here in Florida associated with this feature. That is definitely not going to be the case here, because think about it. First of all, tornadic activity really needs temperature discontinuity. It really needs a lot of good wind shear. It needs a lot of really good mixing of our environmental dynamics, temperature gradients. We need really good low-level CAPE, mid-level CAPE, the lapse rates, and in this case, entirely different phenomena. Entirely different phenomena here. We're looking at mainly warm moisture coming up, and there's just a lot of it coming in because of the trough moving in over the eastern half of the U.S. It's going to take everything that's being generated by the gyre and lift it up towards the northeast. Right over top the state of Florida. We'll go back to our full goes east loop so you guys can get a better picture of it. I'll draw it out for you. So here's our trough. As that continues to dig towards the south, and we continue to see our gyre here rotating around, developing lots of really good thunderstorm coverage and tremendous moisture values. There's a lot of moisture down there. Quite a bit of moisture down there. You can see some very, very moist values up over the Yucatan Peninsula, the southern portions of Mexico. A great amount of thunderstorm activity across the Central American countries. And right in between there, as that trough digs in, if you imagine it gets a little bit further to the south over the next couple of days, it's going to get drawn in like so, hence the thumbnail. Zuriel wants to call it hype, but there's the thumbnail in a nutshell, folks. For those of you who may disagree with it, there's no lies detected here. The lie detector test has determined you're telling the truth. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. And this trough is technically what's saving us in the Gulf of Mexico right now. This is a battle of timing here, and timing is going to win. The reason that vorticity that's trying to consolidate in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico is not going to really be able to execute anything is because this trough is increasing our wind shear. If you'd imagine, we have a channeling of upper-level winds right in through here associated with our polar front jet and our subtropical jet. I'll switch the color one more time to red. This whole area is going to be buffeted by just great amounts of 5 to 300 millibar wind shear. You can already see it on the satellite as well. As the storms blow up, they're quickly just blown off towards the east and southeast. So the trough that's moving over the eastern half of the United States is saving us from our first named storm. If we did not have that at all, in the picture, I would definitely say we are good to go. We can green light Tropical Storm Alberto. But in this case, not yet. The pattern is just way too unfavorable. We still have lots of wind shear. And the reason we're off to a fairly slow start in the hurricane season is we still have some lingering El Nino effects out there. We're still battling a different mixing of not only wind shear that would be characterized by an El Nino Enzo pattern, but also just the fact of the matter that what's left over from our strong El Nino is still settling down. You can't just flip the switch like that. It doesn't work that way. And actually, with that being said, let me switch on over to that real fast, because I've noticed some interesting, this here. We're sitting comfortably at a neutral pattern. We have been since the end of April. We're now almost to mid-June, and we've been cool neutral this entire time. La Nina is not in effect yet. So I don't know. I think we might want to investigate adjusting our Enzo forecast for the rest of the year. That's just me. We could possibly see a huge dip as we go into July and especially August. But I think this is not only going to play a role in the hurricane season, but I also do think this is going to play a role in the entire weather pattern for that matter, which I think is why the Bermuda Azores high is making its return. We're starting to see patterns set up, and I'm also noticing on the Twitter sphere, the X, that folks are mentioning that August and September looks a little bit more impactful in terms of the peak of the hurricane season. So yeah, there's a small risk of tornadoes. I don't really think tornadoes are going to be a risk in this case. In fact, I'm pretty sure if they were, SPC would have been discussing it and talking about it. We just don't have that kind of characterization. That's not the atmosphere we have in place, to tell you the truth. We'll switch over to the HRRR to take a quick look down there over the southeast, just to hopefully put everyone's mind at ease if there is still some hype out there about a tornado outbreak. I don't know where that came from or who even put that out into open air. But you take it through time and you look at the HRRR, there's really no SIG-torn parameters anywhere. And in fact, as the rainfall continues, they go even further and further away. Before the main swath of rainfall and moisture can work its way in, I do think we have the potential for some moderate, if not low-end severe thunderstorms out there. And in fact, I bet you 10 to 1 if we were to look at the radar right now, yeah, we have some special weather statements out there. We're slowly injecting a little bit more moisture into our already almost absolutely unstable environment out here in Florida because of how hot and humid it's been. We just haven't had the moisture source because of high pressure. Now that we're actually getting that instability and that moisture source to come in, we are going to see some pretty spectacular thunderstorms in the immediate future over the next 12 to 24 hours. But then once that rainfall can really come in and stabilize the atmosphere, it's just going to be a consistent hammering of rain and rain and rain. We might not even get a whole lot of thunder and lightning, in my opinion. So over the next 12 hours, especially as we go through max heating of the day tomorrow, I do believe that the thunderstorm risk is going to be there. We could see some moderate, if not low-end severe weather try to manifest itself, at least until a lot of this more bigger rain total can come through. But yeah, that's the main concern here. And then we're going to have to watch once we get through this first entity from about June 15th. Honestly, literally from the second... when we initiate the second half of June to July till the 4th of July holiday, it does seem like the cards are swinging towards the favor of tropical activity. Tropical activity trying to sneak its way into the spectrum. We could possibly see Alberta. We could maybe get a 1-2 punch and see Beryl come in there as well. We'll see. When all these weather agencies put out their hurricane predictions, you think they took into account El Nino still about? No, Chandler. Actually, they did the opposite. A lot of our models early on in the season called for a very powerful La Nina for the hurricane season. So they put that together with the ocean temps, and that's where they got their excessive tropical outlooks, their record-breaking tropical outlooks. I still do think we're going to have a very busy season. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that a neutral to a cool neutral is going to stop the hurricane season. Absolutely not. I think the biggest thing we need to emphasize with that potential, I guess, metronome going from a La Nina to neutral to La Nina to neutral is going to influence where we see the general trends of our Africa, our Cabo Verde storms track. The Greater Antilles are going to be at a slightly elevated risk. The Southeast, the Bahamas, the Mid-Atlantic, we're definitely going to have to see what happens. Because as Kanoy Brown just dropped in the chat, for sure, I'm actually on board with that. We could see a similar pattern to what we saw in 2004. So, oh yeah, incognito, absolutely. So if I pull up the latest, and we'll go ahead and get ready to end the live stream on this, because we're wandering back into speculation territory, and I don't like doing this now that we're in the hurricane season. I'd rather us just continue to look at what the models are doing and what the general trend seems to look like in the immediate future. I don't want to go too far into speculation territory, but to answer your question as best as I can, if we take a look at our latest European seasonal outlook, and we go to the month of August, for example. Now, if you take a look, we have some very high precip amounts out there over the MDR, the Eastern and Central Main Development Region, to the south of the Cabo Verde Islands. The main thing I want you to look at here is not necessarily the rainfall totals or the rainfall anomalies. What I want you to pay close attention to is the fact that our 15 latitude line right here, oh, look at that perfect line. That was so satisfying. Perfect line. Anyways, if you look at where our 15-degree latitude line is here, our MDR wave train, the ITCZ, is well to the south of that. That is sitting right around 9 to 10 degrees latitude. And they say that you typically want, I mean, obviously, guys, don't take that as I'm wishing or manifesting impacts, but I'm saying for the sake of forecasting, if you want an easy forecast, you want tropical organization, you want your waves, you want your disturbances to track right around 9 to 10 degrees latitude west-northwest to avoid seeing a lot of 2023 storms where they just go up and out like this. If they start off higher up, like a lot of our storms did last year, they are greater chances of pushing up and out. But if you look at this August signal here, not only is there a lot of very, very organized precip activity moving up like this for the state of Florida, the Carolinas, the Mid-Atlantic, but we're also seeing a southerly fetch in our ITCZ. So kind of snapshot that in your brain, and I'll go ahead and switch over to the 2004 hurricane season. And look at that. And this was under a neutral, cool neutral pattern. And if you notice right there, see how our systems, look at how many systems we had form down towards the south. Notice that our impactful systems, our major impactful systems, guys, were the ones that formed down around that 10-degree latitude line. Look at number 9, look at number 5. Number 5, if I'm not mistaken, was the infamous Hurricane Charlie. No, I lied. That couldn't be. That would be, who would that be? Number 5. Let's see. So 2, there's Bonnie. There's Charlie. Charlie formed down there well to the south as well near the Windward Islands. This could have been Ivan. It looks like it was Ivan. Yeah, that's definitely Ivan right there, number 5. Let's go up to the top and see. Let me do a fact check real quick. Oh, no, that's Earl. Excuse me. Charlie was number 3. Charlie formed down here. Number 5 was Earl. Number 9 was Ivan. So Ivan was a solid long tracker that formed out there in the MDR just to the south of our 10-degree latitude line. But anyways, guys, to avoid really going too heavy into the theories and it's just, up in the air, the general takeaway is if you look at where our Euro model, the seasonal outlook is, it's showing a lot of activity in the east and central MDR. And notice how much activity we had in 2004 down there in the east and central MDR. And then if you look at the general trend in all of our tracks here and here, most of them obviously for us Floridians, we know Florida got the hammer brought down in 2004, and then so did the Mid-Atlantic. And when they switch back over to the seasonal outlook, I'm seeing a lot of whispers and signs of 2004 right here. And even into September, September's looking more like a mixed bag with lots of out-to-sea systems, out-to-sea signals, with a bit of a lift in our ITCZ out there. But August specifically is really giving 2004 type of signals. The NMME model is looking the exact same way, the North American Multi-Model Ensemble. You switch over to the NMME, this just released a couple of days ago, 3 days ago, and you switch to the precip for August. August is looking very much the same. Lots of MDR activity, and then our greatest precip channel from in that general area is right through there. So that's what I'm thinking, and the reason this is just for everyone watching right now. We have quite a number of viewers in YouTube. We have a few folks on TikTok. This is not grounded in science. This has no research associated with it. This is just my weather heart and my weather gut talking to me, using my intuition. 2004 was a very, very slow season to start. Remember, when did Hurricane Charlie hit? Charlie, the sea storm, hit Friday the 13th of August. So we had a very slow start to the hurricane season. If we go back to 2004 and we look, we had no activity anywhere until August. We didn't have Hurricane Alex, major Hurricane Alex, until July 31st. And then we were off to the races. We were just back to back to back to back to back. August, 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 September, 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 October, 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 October. So just kind of putting that out there. Like I said, this is not scientific. This is not a forecast. This is not me researching or trying to show you guys facts. This is just Weather Center Nazario, David Nazario's speculation here. We were very slow to start the 04 season, and I'm already seeing, I know we're only at June 10th. But I'm seeing a ton of posts everywhere. Even Phil Klotzbach himself is saying, for the first time in X amount of years, we haven't had anything happen yet. We're off to a very slow pace. So to me, that's kind of like a bit of a signal. And on top of that, we have our cool neutral. We don't have our La Nina yet. We were definitely forecast to be in a La Nina at this point in time. We were supposed to be in a La Nina by now. We are not there yet. We are barely into neutral territory. If you look at the actual, where did it go? If you look at the actual pattern here for our 3-4 index, we are as neutral as possible, negative 0.04. So we are right there on neither El Nino nor La Nina. We're not even cool biased. We're not warm biased. We're not cool biased. We're right there at a neutral pattern, and we've been that way since April, the very tail end of April, very early May. So I don't know. If we go back here and we look at the globe and we rewind our model runs to the March and take a look at the SSTs, we were supposed to be in a very powerful La Nina at this point. Look at that, June 2024, La Nina definitely in there. By July, strong La Nina. These anomalies are down towards negative 1.5, negative 2. The same thing with our good old lovely CANSIPs. If we switch back to the March time frame and look at our SSTs, our models are kind of busting. This is for June. We're looking at already a La Nina settling in and then a strong La Nina for August and September. If you come back over to the latest and we look at our NMME for the latest information once again as of June 8th, look at how we've slowed way down. This is a cool neutral look right here, guys. This is not even to negative 1 yet. This is a cool neutral to a weak La Nina. And this is for June, July, and August. La Nina tries to creep in July, August, and September, but this is still a weak La Nina. So the writing's on the wall. We're not, like I said, please, for my guys out there in the chat, we have a lot of folks watching right now. Please don't take it and look at me and, throw fire and flames, throw poop bags or anything like that, or tomatoes at the screen. I'm not trying to say that this is what's going to happen. I'm saying, I'm using common sense here. I'm using common knowledge, and I'm theorizing a little bit. 2004 was slow to start. We're looking at very similar dynamics to 2004, not only in our upper level patterns, but our sea surface temps. We're looking at very similar ENSO fluctuations, ENSO anomalies. So I don't know. And another thing that kind of threw a whole threw a loop in the chain was the last time we had a tropical cyclone in the southern hemisphere off the coast of Brazil was 2004. And that happened this year in March. So, again, speculation, guys. This isn't theory. I mean, this isn't grounded in facts. This isn't actual dedicated research or studying. I'm just putting the puzzle pieces together. We've had a lot of very weird repeats from '04 this year. From December, I forget what happened in December, but we saw something. I got to look back in some of our old videos, because I know we discussed in a tropics talk or a post-tropics topic that something had happened that was very reminiscent of 2004, and then in March we had that random tropical storm, not Alita, tropical storm something off of the Brazilian coastline, and the last time we had something like that happen was March of 2004, in the same month. So, very weird up-and-comings, very strange hints and whispers of things repeating itself. So, do the charts look the same for 2004 and 2024? Let me take a look real quick. Let me go to Climate Reanalyzer, and let's take a look at the, let's see, climate data. I gotta look and see where I can find here it is. I want to find, this is a new website that I've been toying around with, and I want to find where is our historical. Got to find our historical maps. Let's see, monthly reanalysis. Here we go, monthly reanalysis maps. All right, here we go. So let's go to, where's the sea surface temp? We'll go to the date line. We'll go to the international date line so we can see the ENSO regions perfectly. There we go. All right, let's get we have the surface, sea surface temperature. Let's go back to 2004, and we will go to August and plot. Yeah, see, look at that. Actually, wow, yeah. Whoa. That looks very similar. That looks very, very similar. Only thing that's different is our PDO. The PDO up here in the North Pacific is very different. We are very, very hot off the Japanese islands, the Aleutian chain. We are very hot up there, so that could play a role. But this looks very similar because right now, if we come over to our live look at the ocean analysis, check that out. Very, very similar look. Extremely similar looks. Snapshot that in your minds and look at where we are right now. Extremely similar. Actually, I lied. I just lied to you guys. I'm sorry. Looking at the actual sea surface temperatures, the Pacific is exactly the same. The Atlantic is exactly the same. Hottest waters concentrated in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico and off the East Pac coastline of Mexico. You come back over here, hottest waters in the Gulf of Mexico, in the Caribbean, and the East Pac coast. Very similar signal out there across the Atlantic. Wow, that's okay. We got to go over to our anomalies now. Let's take a look at what the anomalies look like. That's sea surface temp. Let's go to, where are the anomalies? I should be able to look at the anomalies for this. There's geopotential heights, sea ice, snowfall, total precip, sea surface temp. I think I might have to switch the model. Let me go here to, see the climate model. I might need to find what, see the sea level pressure. I'm trying to find our actual anomalies so we can take a look at how strong or how weak the Enzo was. Having a hard time finding it. Got to switch through all these different records. That's not going to be it. Let's go here. Surface. Plot type. There we go. Anomaly. I just realized I don't think I have it. I don't think I have it set. I think I put sea level pressure on accident, so this is going to dork up our charts. Oh, no, here we go. Okay, we got it. Shoot, this puts it into perspective how hot the Atlantic is. Look at that. Our anomalies were very, very low across the Atlantic, so we were normal in 2004. We were pretty much normal across the board outside of off of Spain, Portugal, the northwest corner of Africa, and in the central MDR we were a little warm, but we definitely had a cool neutral, kind of a neutral oscillation down there in the Atlantic for August. Opposite PDO though, this right here is definitely opposite. This is flip-flopped. Our hottest anomalies are here and our coolest anomalies are off our west coast. That's the only difference. If I come back over here and we look at the anomalies and you take a look, yeah, that's the only opposite here is that our PDO is switched. We have our coldest anomalies up against our coast and the hottest anomalies are up there off of Asia. And that was flip-flopped in 2004. But very similar signals generally out there everywhere. So, yeah. Like I said, it's still speculating, it's theorizing, but at the same time, there are some pieces of information that you can use to support a case of seeing a reminiscent 2004 hurricane season. Not saying we're going to have a Charlie, Francis, Ivan, Gene, Bonnie 5-storm, 6-storm impact for Florida, but I'm saying, general tracks, we might see something along those lines. We can do a hot wash. We'll have to remember this conversation down in November, December of this year, and we'll see how this holds up. As a matter of fact, yeah, we'll end the live stream on that note. For my folks watching on TikTok and for my folks watching on YouTube, I'm willing to be courageous enough to say, let's hold it down. Let's do a friendly wager here. Let's all remember this conversation that we're having on June 10th at 8:35 Eastern Central Time, or Eastern Standard Time. Let's go ahead. And when we finally, Lord willing, if we all can make it together on this channel as a community together to the end of hurricane season, on the end of the hurricane season, November 30th, November 31st, I forget if is it 30 days in November or is it 31 days? I want to say it's 31 days, right? It's 31 days in November, right? No, it is 30 days. Okay, so on November 30th, we'll sit down and we'll all talk. and genuinely hot wash it. Let's see if my theory was completely out to lunch. Let's take a look and see if the theory was completely just stupid, didn't make any sense. It didn't. The heck is going on? Whoa, that was freaky. What in the heck was that? Let's so yeah, on November 30th, we'll all sit down. Everybody in the chat right now on YouTube, you're definitely more than welcome to tune into that. Lord willing, we're all still here. Hopefully, we can continue to grow this community before the end of the hurricane season. And let's hot wash it. And you guys can call me out if we look at the general tracks for all the storms we have this season, and they don't look anything close to 2004. I'm talking like we can't find any similarity at all. Then I'll admit it. I'll say, yep, see, so I was wrong. That theory busted wide open. So we'll see. I'm willing to put that wager down. I'll have to make a note of that, as a matter of fact, right here so I can remember that. Let me get a pen. That's not working. Here we go. Let me write that down. But thank you all, everybody, for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please drop me a comment in the comment section down below, or reach out to me on my privatized social media, not my privatized, my other social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, and X. Feel free to leave me a private message or a comment on one of those platforms. I always make it a point to get back to everybody. And yeah. Thank you very much for being such a gracious audience tonight. We actually kept the trolls to a minimum. I'm so grateful for that. Very fruitful conversation. We got a lot of heavy rain coming through for the next 5 to 7 days. And then potential tropical activity that we'll have to be dealing with, not only up the eastern seaboard, but down there in the Gulf. We'll be watching you guys closely, Louisiana, Texas, and the east shores of Mexico. And then we'll see if we're going to pop out one more entity before the end of June and the end of the favorable MJO phase down there in the Caribbean, the western southern Caribbean. So, yeah, folks, that's all she wrote. You guys are great. To Gen Z, it is my strongest recommendation that you plan on moving to higher ground by 2040 before you never retire. That might have some reality to it. But you guys are amazing. I hope you've been off to a solid start this week. And I hope you have a great rest of the week. We'll see you again soon. If anything big happens between now and tomorrow evening, we'll do another live stream. Like I said, we're always routine here on the channel Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If anything does come up, we'll just add to the content. So we'll do another live stream tomorrow. That's if. Nothing being scheduled just yet. We'll have to see what we wake up to in the morning. We'll see if we do a live stream at our 9 a.m. time. If not, we'll hold out until Wednesday, and we'll talk again on Wednesday, guys. But I do bid you a fond farewell. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I hope you all are safe out there and sound, and we'll talk again soon. Until then, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.